Apparently the universe doesn't want me to retire. It's got other ideas and plans for me, so it would seem. Much to my chagrin, oftentimes. But the situation being is that my mind, my consciousness, via cosmic consciousness, whatever's going on, whatever produces these trains of thought in certain people. So every day I have questions and investigations into the nature of what it is to be, and millions, billions of people never ever ever have a single line of inquiry into these subject matters. And so why is it that a few of us do and most of us don't? It really is quite a conundrum. And on my bookshelf behind me, and on previous bookshelves, I've had hundreds of books on philosophy, psychoanalysis, and you know, investigative subject matter, where other people have been driven the same or similarly. Now, of course, I'm a product of modern times, and I use the modern facility just to articulate that which I have been thinking. Whereas in bygone days, people would have to start scratching, maybe with a quill and some ink, if not a biro, or then, you know, a clunky typewriter. So I'm using this format, and often I've thought that I would just pick out many of my videos and feed them through ChatGPT or GTP, whatever it is, and have them just write the transcript, and I'll just include these in a book with maybe a little bit of tweaking here and there. I think that might be very useful, interesting, and the thing is, you see, when I articulate my subject matter, it's coming from source. It actually is coming from source, because I don't think it's inside my head, in my brain. I don't even believe it's in my consciousness. I don't believe I have a consciousness. It is consciousness. And the consciousness is feeding the information via the portal of this human avatar. I'm absolutely convinced of that. And many thinking people or artists and this, that and the other, they will all say the same. I didn't do it. I don't know anything about this. Stuff just comes, and a compulsion comes with it, and then there's an end result. And so that's what's happened with me for this past 15 years. So one of the myriad of things that I've been thinking about is that why is it that apparently the human being has been in its present form for 300,000 years, and we still don't know anything about what we are, where we come from, and all those sort of things. We have been blessed or cursed with an imagination facility which enables us to ask a million questions, but only gives us maybe dichotomous, paradoxical answers to a very, very few of the questions that we pose. And I can't even think at this moment in time whereby we would be given something which is absolutely concrete. If we ask the question, would we get an absolute concrete answer? In my estimation is that there's nothing concrete. Everything being language, words just mean other words. So how can anything ever be concrete? If, you know, I hold up a rock and say this is a rock, well, we can also say, well, what's the difference between a rock and a stone. When does a stone become a rock? Who knows that? Does anybody on the planet know that? I don't think anybody does know that. It's kind of like, it's just a general sort of notion that if a stone gets big, then it becomes a rock. Well, when does a rock become a mountain? All these sort of things. Who can say that? Who's ever written about it? Here we have a rock, and then with like 2 extra grains of silica, then that all of a sudden comes into the category of being a mountain, or a stone, or a pebble. You know, let's have a look at a pebble. So we've got a pebble, then we've got a stone, then we've got a rock, then we've got a boulder, then we've got let's say a promontory, then we have a mountain maybe, and then we have a continent. It's just language, isn't it, people? It's just concepts, it's just semantics, and that's all that is going on here. And so I asked the question then, over and above that, well, for fuck's sake, in 300,000 years, we haven't managed to get down to anything which is remotely substantial. And then some people could pipe in that, oh, well, we've got science, Aaron, and that's what their job is to do, to investigate this, that and the other, and they know the answers. Well, no, they don't know any more answers than you or I. Maybe they will look somewhat more into the minutiae of things using microscopes and all different sorts of technological devices to discern particles and non-particles and all the rest of it, i.e., you know, in the quantum field of things. But they're only using semantics, concepts and language the same as you or I use to describe our everyday circumstances. So we can't, in actual fact, fundamentally describe anything. And also, you see, when we look at the language variances between English and all other languages, you know, how many languages are there on the planet? Thousands. And so we all have a different sound, different pronunciation, a different idea, a different concept, using different semantics and, you know, all this stuff that gives us the illusion that we actually are abreast of things and we do know things. We just have a general consensus of ideas which we loosely agree upon, which we take for granted, and then we consider that we do in actual fact live in a corporeal world, when in actual fact we don't live in a corporeal world. We don't live in any world at all, save for our imagination. It's all imagination, people. And so when we then go back 2,000 years, no, it's even more than that, because look, the Old Testament was apparently 1,500 years old by the time Christ you know, made his presence known. So we've got 3,500 years from the origin of, let's say, Genesis, with the story of creation and the Garden of Eden and all that sort of stuff. Why do you think it is that the so-called creator of the cosmos, and man and earth, he had one prerequisite, one underlying rule which was absolutely not to be broken? And the curious and bizarre thing about this rule is it's very similar to if, for instance, we as adults or parents, we leave small children in a room for a long time until they get very hungry, and we put a cookie jar in that room, and we tell them, don't be eating from that cookie jar. Okay, you can do anything, you can play with all the toys in this room, but don't be eating from that cookie jar, because if you do, I'm going to whoop you so bad. I'm telling you now, I'm going to make your life a living hell if you fuck with that cookie jar. Well, that's exactly the scenario that was given to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. You can eat from all the fruits and all the wonderful things, but don't be fucking with that tree of knowledge. Why do we think it is that God didn't want Adam and Eve to have knowledge? And if they did have knowledge, then they would surely die. Why would they die? Would he kill them? He never actually killed them, did he? He never struck them down. He never did anything like that. He just said that now they're cursed. You're cursed now. Was it his doing, or was it just how the cosmos is? Did God know that when entities acquire knowledge, they become cursed? I think if we follow that route, people, we're going to start to discover something. So when we look then at why this tree of knowledge was present in the Garden of Eden, displaying wonderful, tempting, delicious looking fruit, and not only that, that there was a serpent coiled around it and hissing at Eve saying, hey, by the way, that's very tasty, you know. And, oh, don't listen to that dude telling you that you'll die. You won't die. Just eat from it. And then you become wise. Because he, Jehovah, Yahweh, said that let them not eat from this tree, because if they do, then they will become like us. And apparently Elohim is plural for gods. And when we look into the Gnostic writings, we look into the Anunnaki, Sumerian texts, and all these different sorts of stuff, and mythology from all over the world. We have the same recurring stories written thousands of years apart, all over the world, in different cultures. And so it seems that either this God, one God, was pervasive in all other gods. They just came under a different name and a different cultural depiction, this, that and the other. Or it was human consciousness which somehow knew at its root that as soon as we start to get involved with information, then our psyches get fucked up. Because when Adam and Eve ate from that fruit, they became cursed. Well, what cursed them? Let's eradicate the fact that God cursed them to slither like serpents and to have the greatest of pain during childbirth and all this sort of stuff. Let's just say we take that bit out of the equation, and then we just come down to that that's just stories being told by humans that have worked a certain thing out. And what they worked out, a bit like what Lao Tzu worked out with the Tao Te Ching, he worked out that when we are absolutely as close as nature and we don't get involved in information, then we are absolutely living in the Garden of Eden. We are living in nature, people. We are absolutely immersed in nature, where we're supposed to be. But what has happened is, and this is one of the things that Carl Jung claims, that consciousness is a blessing in some respects, because it takes us out of the mire, takes us out of all the hardship of life, but it also corrupts our minds and our bodies with the amount of information we have, which confuses us with choice, and it gives us issues because many of us are not well enough equipped with the cognitive facility to be able to solve problems and work things out. And so we get confused about that, and then maybe we get depressed because of our confusion, and we don't know where we are, and you know, all these different sorts of things. And so for those of us that start asking questions, how the fuck did we get here? Who are we? What is this? How can we work out any of this? Well, we come to an impasse with every single thing. And it's like there is a firewall which is preventing the human being from acquiring the knowledge of this construct. Why is that? Why are we not permitted to know what the construct is? Why is it that we are not permitted to see the underwriting of these programs? Why is it that we can't receive the program of the module or the technical data, like, you know, the building of a computer? I'm sure for nerds or people interested in that, they can have available to them all of the intricacies of how these computers are actually created from the very beginning of the natural resources. I don't think there's too many super duper trade secrets these days, because computers have been around, you know, for a long time now, and the beans are going to get spilt at some stage or another. And so we find that information out, how that was created. Because that's artificial, and we created that via our art. What is art? Our imagination. So we created this stuff out of our imagination, people. So it's all modern art. And then when we try to apply the same thing to, let's say, bodies, well, we have to get involved with some sort of lineage of back engineering. We have to cut open the body, and we have to look at all the different stuff, and with whatever technical equipment we have at that particular time, then we'll start to investigate it with that. When in the old days, when surgeons started to open the body curiously, just to have a look what the fuck's going on in there, it was kind of like, oh, there's this and there's this and there's this, and what the fuck. And you know, throughout the years we've got a little bit more sophisticated, but we still know really next to nothing. And I'm just perplexed that 300,000 years, people, 300,000 years, if we believe that. Who said that? How does anybody know that we have been around for 300,000 years? What's the evidence of that? Well, the evidence that they proclaim is that they can carbon date certain things that we have used, like spearheads or arrowheads or axe heads or this, that and the other. They can find these things in the ground with pollen and different stuff which can be carbon tested to a certain realm of accuracy, and so they can go, okay, then yeah, well, we can find shit going back 300,000 years. But as far as civilization goes, there's a great level of conflict going on in that realm, you know, with the age of the pyramids and with the age of Göbekli Tepe, and all other monolithic sites all over the world. We have not even the slightest rational idea of how the pyramids were built. That level of technology is beyond us now. Now, how is it then that we proclaim that we have been around for 300,000 years when we don't even know how those pyramids were built? Let's say 4,000 years ago, 7,000 years ago. Some even speculate that the Phoenix was built, the Sphinx was built 12,000 years ago. Well, 12,000 years ago against 300,000 years, what the fuck have we been doing? And how is it that if we are ancestors of hominids which were around 300,000 years, then we would have had everything passed down to us unconsciously. It will be in the collective consciousness, and it will be embedded in our genetics, this, that and the other. Well, why is it that we haven't even a clue? We just don't know. We can come up with outlandish, nonsensical, impractical ways of constructing these pyramids, but none of them, to our rational states of mind, are remotely feasible. And it's absurd, isn't it? So I would speculate, well, let's forget about the 300,000 years of ancestry, because we can't prove that, and it could just be hearsay, and it's highly dependent on speculation and carbon C14 testing and this, that and the other. So then, if we look a little bit closer, then we can say, well, Sumerians reckon that, you know, those from the stars came down and they told us how to do this and they told us how to do that, and they engineered the human being from Neanderthal man for their purposes, and this and the other, and that's what we are. Well, might be, it is just equally as feasible that we've been around for 300,000 years. Then we start looking at other options like the simulation. Well, all this stuff can be simulated, like dinosaur fossils and you know, all the rest of this stuff. It could all be just written into a program of the simulation, because to be fair, I mean, most people who have thought long and hard about these things are really starting to come around that we are actually in a simulation. And when you got people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, one of the most eminent and prolific of scientists today, he's saying, well, I'm still waiting for someone to prove to me that we're not in a simulation. So therefore, he is convinced that we are in a simulation. And one of the things he is a cosmologist, isn't he? And you hear it said that it is other things which basically revolve or born out of that thing, gazing at the stars. That's why he's got this YouTube channel about the stars and this, that and the other. And so when he was educated into the mainstream system of the corporeal world and everything's atoms and this, that and the other, and he's going, to be fair, in all my life I haven't seen no evidence of that. It's just highly speculative, and when people say to me that this is a simulation, and you read what Nick Bostrom has to say, because he's the one that coined that term, well, it seems very rational, it's very logical, and it's illogical to think that we're not in a simulation. That's the thing, that's where we get trapped in logic, you see, because it's the logic of our brains that trap us into these suggestions, because our logic doesn't enable us to go outside unless we fantasize without logic into religion and gods and you know, wizards and all this different sorts of stuff. And that's what the human being's been doing for thousands of years with its mythology. You know, Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Eastern mythology, all over the world have been putting their tuppence worth in to some sort of a creation theory. And so we've got these creation theories all over the world in all cultures, and none of us are any the wiser than anybody else. But what I'm going to be doing now is just drawing closer to the crux of what this actual monologue is about, and it's about why we are so conflicted with information, knowledge. I absolutely know from my experience, people, that the trajectory I have travelled in my life, when I have been in periods of my life when I'm absolutely self-contained and I am meditating many hours each day and I don't have anything actually to think about. There was a period in my life when I was living in Bulgaria and I didn't speak the language. It's a very difficult language to learn. It's very similar to Russian. And so for the first couple of years I didn't bother very much, and because I couldn't communicate with people because there was hardly anybody that spoke English there in the early days, then I just lived in a very insular, isolated world, and I loved that. The reason why I loved it, because I could travel on a train or on a bus, or I could go and sit in a cafe and everybody would be bantering on this, that and the other, and I wouldn't understand a single word that was being said. So I couldn't never be influenced by what they were saying. I couldn't never say, oh, that person's talking a load of shit, or this person is in a fucking fantasy world, or that person is this, or that person's that. I couldn't be sitting there judging my fellow fellow man, because I had nothing to judge other than the visual thing. Oh, that person's ugly. Oh, she's nice. You know, this sort of thing. But if you retract back from that, and you see, in the early days, even women were completely unavailable, because the Bulgarian women were very, very reserved, curious variety. And foreigners were so new to them that they didn't know what to do with them. It wasn't until later years, when they started to realise that foreigners have got a lot of money, that they became remotely interested. So initially, I wouldn't even get looked at by any of the girls or the women. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to do what I'm doing, and I was property speculating, and so there was one period where I was waiting to get a property sold, and there was very, very little for me to do in any given day, because it's just a long waiting process of a couple of years. And so I went deeply introspective, and I was meditating every day for 5 hours. I would walk around the small town, and I would sit by a fountain, and I would meditate there with the thunder of the fountain for an hour. Then I'd go to the beach, and I'd sit there with the crashing of the waves for an hour, and then I would sit at a cafe and just listen to the world going on around me, and you know, different sorts of cars and lorries and buses, and you know, I'd be hearing all these different sounds, and I'd be trying to work out what they were pertained to. And sometimes I was curious enough just to open my eyes and just to see if I could confirm, because I could start to learn the difference between certain cars. Because if you're just listening to a combustion engine, then you listen to the wind buffering, and you listen to the hum of the tyres, and you know, depending on the speed or the thickness of the tyre or the weight of the vehicle, the buffering of the wind, and all these different sorts of things you can start to categorise. So I was doing that because that's what I was doing. I was just observing the world around me, and then I used to sit in parks and I would listen to the birds singing in the springtime. And I would go, well, look, you've got one variety of bird over there, and that's talking to that bird over there. And I could hear that conversation going on. Then there's another variety of bird over there, and that was talking to another bird there. And also, intermittently, there's another one of those varieties chirping in here. So you've got three in the conversation here, one particular bird, and then you've got two in the conversation there. And then I'd work out all the others, and I'll try to discern whether they are incorporated into this conversation, or whether, you know, they are, you know, just singing. But you know what I come to realise is, people, when you listen very closely to birds, they're not actually singing. That's just our interpretation. They're talking, they're communicating. And so when I'm saying to you that they were talking to each other across the canopies, of course, that's exactly what they were doing. They're communicating for partners, for, you know, mating, and communicating about food and different sorts of things. And what I've learned is, throughout my years, when I've listened very intently to the wildlife throughout the whole year, I know that there's many, many different varieties of conversation. There's a different variety in the deepness and the heart of winter, and I suggest that the birds are speaking about there's these berries over there in Mrs. Jones's garden. So anybody that wants those berries, then just pop over there. They're not talking about partners. They're not talking about sex. They're not talking about nest building or family rearing or anything like that. They're talking just about rudimentary things. Maybe the weather. It's a bit fucking cold today. Tweet, tweet, tweet. It's a bit fucking freezing today. And fucking it's cold. You know, people, we have to broaden our imagination into speculating, because animals are vastly more clever than we give them credit for. And so then when we get into the spring, all of a sudden it's like, who's interested in me? Tweet, tweet, tweet. Who wants to come and build a house with me? Who wants to make a home with me? Tweet, tweet, tweet. Look at my lovely plumage, and all this sort of stuff. And then when you've got the family reared, well, you've got that level of communication. And then after all the breeding's done, then you'll notice in the heart of summer, it goes very, very quiet. and you can be walking through a wood and there's hardly a single bird which is talking. And you go, what's going on there? They don't need to talk anymore. They've done it all. It's kind of like, well, it's summer, there's an abundance of food around. We don't need to tell anybody where the food is, and all of our young have flown and they're doing their own thing. Fuck, I'm just going to chill out and smoke my pipe. So all these birds sitting up in the fucking trees, smoking their fucking pipes. You can barely even see a bird. Where the fuck are they? Where have they gone? But of course in the springtime they see them everywhere. But there are no less birds in the summer, but they're just more sedentary. So we can get involved in all of this different sorts of stuff, and this is what I do. This is how my mind works. And you know, I once listened to a Richard Feynman. I used to listen to a lot of Richard Feynman, theoretical physicist, Nobel Prize winner, genius mind. And one of the videos, he was speaking about how his mind worked, and he was saying, well, one day he was sitting by the pool. And his kids were playing in the pool. But whilst he was lying on the deck chair, you know, watching his kids intermittently, he'd also have an eye for the ladies. But he'd say, if there was no beautiful ladies around for me to be distracted by, then it started to contemplate the nature of the universe and this, that and the other. And what he started to think about was that when his kids were swimming in the pool, he started to think, well, I wonder if there could be a way to monitor every single energy wave in that pool, from when the kids went like this and they kicked their feet and up and down like this, the pulsating, the ripples, the waves were going in all different sorts of directions. And he was visualizing that and imagining it. And you know, obviously we've seen similar sort of things on computer graphics these days because they're that good, but he was trying to work out, now this was maybe in the late 70s, early 80s, how that could be done. And so that was all the sort of things that preoccupied his mind. Well, my mind works in a similar sort of way, and I'm not claiming any level of genius, but you know, when we are in these, well, I often do, but I think, look, when we start to enter into this particular state of consciousness where we do inquire very, very deeply and profoundly into lots of things, well, that is what most people would consider to be genius. But because I haven't written any papers and you know, I've only got one book out and I'm not renowned for anything like that, then nobody would ever consider that my mind is remotely anything like Richard Feynman's. But in actual fact, it thought very, very similarly about lots of things. And so, you know, it's like Einstein, you know, dreaming, fantasizing about traveling at the speed of light on a rocket. Just thought to himself, well, you know, how fast does light go? You know, because it seems instant. And when we turn a light on, well, it's 183,000 miles a second. And so it seems instant, albeit it's not. So people think about all these things, and I think about a lot of things. And I'm thinking about why is it that we have a problem with knowledge? Why is it that I'm sitting before you now and I have been seeking this knowledge very intensely for the past 15 years and I can't stop doing it, Richard Feynman style? My mind doesn't stop thinking about these things. It's not like it's an incessant thing, but it's very regular throughout the day. I'll just get a download and it's like, right, fucking hell, I've got to investigate that. I've got to think about that. And then, like, as I'm doing my stuff and maybe playing my guitar or cooking or washing up, I'm thinking about, well, where does that lead? How can I discover that? Let me think about that. And it's kind of like, okay, well, look, about this knowledge, you see, because look, the reason why I'm speaking about the knowledge is because I realised throughout all these years of my personal investigation into knowledge that many people are very, very deeply troubled by knowledge and by information. And most people are troubled by the inability to be able to decipher, to pigeonhole, and to put to rest, to defrag. Let me just get some water, people. This is probably why my voice is tired. You see, people, when they try to think, lots of people say my head hurts. Well, you know, that's quite a reality. That's not just, you know, a euphemism or you know, someone being humorous. People's heads do actually get very confused, and people can't think too long, for too long. And I've seen many people in my life, when I've started to engage with them, like I'm speaking to you now, and I'm looking to them for a response, and I'm asking them questions, I see them physically burn out. Within 10 minutes, I see their face sagging and the complexion disappearing from their face, because the energy that it's took them to address some of the things that I've asked them, which they've never ever thought about, has depleted their energy resource within their mind, because their brain simply wasn't used to it. And so I don't know whether any of you have experienced this. When you speak to people, you physically see them drain, and then they say, woof, 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 they've got to go. Anyway, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. When we're talking to somebody, you'll see them rapidly lose interest, because it's a new world, it's another world, it's a terrifying world, and they can't compete with you. They feel entirely intimidated, and they've got to get the fuck out of there, because they don't know what happened to them. And then maybe they'll go away and they'll go, what just fucking happened to me? That guy was speaking about things I've never fucking heard about. I thought I knew something. I thought I was knowledgeable, and that guy's speaking a different language. How many other people are there around that could do that to me? Many. But you don't meet them too often, because they're not in everyday circles, and if they are, maybe they'll keep themselves to themselves. But you see, I don't keep myself to myself, and if I'm sitting next to somebody on a train, then I'll engage in conversation, and I'll see where they are, and within an instant I'll be taking them on the journey that they never fucking imagined existed. And lots of people have said, wow, that's fucking incredible, that's amazing, that's unbelievable. But many people, they just look at you like this. It's just as if you are the ill person, you're the sick person. How could anybody think of those things? Why could anybody do that? I once sat next to a doctor on a flight coming back from Africa, and I was reading Plato's Republic, and I didn't know he was the doctor at the time. After he started speaking with me, then he told me what he was. And I was reading Plato's Republic, and he said to me, why do you read that stuff? And I said, well, I mean, Plato is one of the greatest thinkers the world's ever known. But what do you get from it? And I'm like, you get a different way of thinking. And in time, when you read philosophy, your ability to think broadens. And he's like, oh. Because what he did, being a doctor, going through school and university, he just copied. He copied absolutely everything. And he never had to think about anything. He never had to imagine about something. He never had to, you know, solve any problems. It was just about learning about the body, what people already knew. So he never actually had to think. All he had to do was open his brain up, his mind up, to receive information like a parrot, and then just repeat it for the rest of his life. So the difference is between, like, let's say, most realms which the human being will engage in, they are learning, aren't they? They're learning the biology, they're learning the physics, they're learning the astrophysics, they're learning whatever it is, geography, this and the other. But philosophers, they are inventing, they're thinking, and they're coining new terms and phrases, and they're asking, well, how does this marry up with this? And what's the difference between this and this? And why these have a relationship? There must be something that gives them the ability, facility to have a relationship with one another, but it isn't obvious to the mind. Let's see if you can work it out. And there's just a million things to think about. So Let me regrow. Oh, goodness me. And this is what I'm always saying. It's getting increasingly ever more difficult for me to hold these monologues and to keep you engaged because I'm just so tangential. So what I'm saying now here is, why is it that the most prominent and prolific and respected religious text on this planet warns us without any doubt the danger of knowledge? We could say, well, that was an evil god, that was a demiurge that didn't want us to become like them because they would feel threatened by it. Yeah, we could say that. What else? What else? There must be, you know, 1,000 other reasons. Well, I tend to think along the lines of human psychology, because the mythology is great, but it's all fantasy and it's all pie in the sky and it's all stuff that you can't prove. You could never prove that. You know, it's like Zeus and Apollo and all the rest of them. It's kind of like, look, they came out of human psyche. So what I do is I discount these gods and things in the sky, albeit, people, I have seen them with my own eyes. I've seen these long-bearded, long-haired, muscular 70-year-old men with togas on, flying through the sky. I've seen these absolutely crystal clear, as big as 2 or 3 or 5 double-decker buses in the sky, along with cherubs, bat-winged, fanged and bat ears, and I've seen this stuff. All this stuff from Michelangelo's fucking Sistine Chapel, you know, depictions of fucking God and cherubs and all this sort of stuff. I've seen that stuff on DMT. And so I swear that's where it came out of. It came out of the collective unconsciousness. And when we get into a certain realm of consciousness, then we see this stuff, actually physically with our eyes. And then when the DMT wears off, the you know, fucking gods, they turn back into clouds. It's fucking incredible. It really is incredible. And seeing those things have been so transformative in my life, because I knew then, without any doubt in my mind, where all these depictions of God in the clouds, in the Bible, where they all came from, because people were taking some form of DMT and they saw that shit for themselves. And then they go, well, that's God. And it's easy to consider that 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, they saw that shit on DMT. Well, fuck me, what else would you think? You think, well, the fucking God's there. I saw it with my own fucking eyes, you know? But today we've got a massive amount of information bamboozling us. And everybody's hijacked, their mind's hijacked, and it's just, you know, a constant loop of this information, but we're not thinking about anything, we're not creating ourselves, we're not designing. Most of us, we're just absorbing and being hypnotized and hijacked by information. And what I'm saying now is this could be the reason why people 2,000 years ago already knew that the acquisition of knowledge wasn't a good thing for the human being. This is the important part, what I'm saying is, people, because when we read the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu will say that the most content position for a human being is to be absolutely at one with nature. So you're living with completely raw materials, and you're hunting, and you're gathering foods and this, that and the other. When you're living in these small communities, you know, away from everybody else, away from the maddening crowd, you've got 150, 250 people in the clan. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody serves a purpose. Everybody is valuable. Everybody's got a trade and this, that and the other. And when you can live in that self-contained unity, that's the ideal position of the human being. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the Garden of Eden. So when biblical people were writing about this stuff, they knew from their experience that people living in small villages in the mountains and this, that and the other were happy as fucking Larry. They'd lived to be a fucking 150 years old, and they wouldn't be confused or traumatized with a mass of information. They were simple people. And I believe that because our brain isn't evolving anything like us fast enough, because the technology, of course, within the last 100 years, it's just gone absolutely exponential, and it's too much for us. We can't keep up with it, and we're having a mental implosion. So is it that the people who wrote these Bible stories were actual people from the future? Because how could anybody really see such magnitude? How did Carl Jung see this in 1930? He wrote about it in that book I've just been reading, how even people in the schools in those days, because of the advent of radio, that they weren't concentrating anymore. And maybe they were thinking about football, or making bows and arrows when they should have been learning their algebra and this, that and the other. You see, it's the distraction that takes us away from the contemplation, and that's why very few people can actually contemplate these days, like Richard Feynman, like lots of scientists that do have the ability to be able to think. And it's like, what I'm doing now is I'm speaking, and I could speak and 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 speak, and it would be endless if it wasn't for the fact that my voice is already tired. And I don't claim authorship, ownership for where this stuff comes from. I don't claim that I am doing it because I want to impart this information to you. I have no desire at all to impart this information to you. I'm compelled to do it. I'm not doing any of it out of the benevolence of my own heart. Because to be quite frank, people, I'm past that sort of level where I think anything I say could be actually of any help. In my naivety in the early days, I would think that, I like to help people with this, that and the other. But I don't believe that anything I could ever say is ever going to help anybody in any shape or form. Simply because you, the viewer, you either know a little bit of what I'm saying or a lot of what I'm saying, or you won't. You will either accept it or you won't. If you don't know it, the vast majority of you people will reject it. It won't mean anything to you because it's like, let's say, a virus. You got a virus coming, it needs a cell to connect to. But within most people's minds, there isn't this cell to connect to for the information which I am imparting. And so it will just come in one ear and go out the other. The age-old adage goes in one ear and comes out the other. Why? Because there's nothing for it to connect to. There isn't the mothership for the little spaceship to connect to. There's no home. There's no connection. And that's what happens with information for the vast majority of people. Their consciousness doesn't have the receptors. So the vast majority of things I'm speaking about, and these problems and these issues and these lines of inquiry, are of no interest to the vast majority of you. How many of you are bored now? How many of you think, what the fuck's this guy on about? Why does he think about such fucking shit? Why can't he just think about shagging birds and fucking going skiing or something? Like most people. Well, this is what I do. And so, what I've seen throughout all of my life, I've seen that information is a big problem for people. And with many people, it sends them into a downward spiral of confusion and depression and anxiety and bewilderment and all this stuff which is absolutely unfathomable. And when I speak with my sister, and I've for years I've tried to give her books and open her up and enable her to listen, but she will not listen. And the reason why she will not listen is because she's terrified of that, and also she doesn't have the receptors for this logical, rational thinking, because the motor is turning over too fastly about incessant things. I'm this, that's that, that's it, I know this, I know everything, and it never rests for a single second just to fucking stop. And then her higher self can engage over the ego and say, do you really know any fucking thing at all, ego? And that's what has to happen before people's minds, most people's minds, become receptive to new thoughts. And with me, busy all over the world, conquering the world, and, travelling, climbing mountains and diving on barrier reefs and all these wonderful things, jungle trekking, monkeys and fucking toucans, absolutely incredible. I was completely infatuated by all that. But when I was doing all that, I was looking at the minutiae of everything, and I was asking questions way back when. But I was too busy being distracted by everything to follow those questions through to any real level. But now I'm not distracted. I have the memories of all that stuff. I have an expanded state of consciousness, and I'm now able to apply myself to asking these questions and posing, presenting some answers. And so, again, I'm coming back now to the initial question. And the question is, why is it that knowledge is such a detriment to the vast majority of human beings? And I would suggest that we're not consciously awoken enough, we're not evolved enough to be able to receive that level of influx. Our minds, they're just babies. Like Carl Jung says, consciousness is just like a baby. It really is just like a baby. And if you look back, with the exception of a few brilliant thinkers, then the vast majority of people were just working in the fields, weren't they? Working in the fields, doing very, very rudimentary, simple jobs. And it was only 1 in a billion that decided that, well, let's create a fucking steel shovel to help us with that. Let's create a steel plough. Let's create a combustion engine which can drag this steel plough, which can plough as more than 20 horses. Let's do all these sort of things. And people were thinking, they came out of the field, and I can't be doing with the fucking field, and they picked up a quill and some ink, and they started to tentatively draw and work things out, and then they went presenting to people. Were you fucking crazy? These contraptions, like Leonardo da Vinci. For those of you that have looked at any of his books with what he was inventing and all this different sort of stuff, then you'll see that he was absolutely massively prolific in all these different sorts of inventions of tanks and helicopters. This was like 500 years ago, people. Where did that stuff come from? The notion of a helicopter, the notion of a tank, where did this shit come from, people? Did it come from the future? Did it come from the ether? Did it come from the Akasha? Did it come from the collective unconsciousness? Did it come from cosmic consciousness, which is been doing this stuff forever? And if you start to think about certain things, or if your mind is fertile enough to receive this information, I think that's what it is. When our minds become fertile, and the fertility of the mind is the stillness of the mind. And when we are very proficient meditators and our minds are very, very still, my mind is absolutely still much of the time, and I don't have I don't have repetitive thoughts. That's the curse of the human being, repetitive thoughts, catastrophizing, all this sort of stuff. I don't have any of that. But when I'm going about my everyday business, mostly I'm just completely at peace, but then I'll get a download and I'm like, I suppose I'm going to have to make a video about that later. And I won't need to think about it anymore. I can go to the gym, I can go cycling, I can play my guitar, and then, maybe I'll go to bed, and then it'll say, you got to make that video. Yeah, I'll make that fucking video. And then I wake up in the morning and it'll go, don't forget that video. And okay, alright, then I'll make that fucking video. And like now, so I'm making this fucking video. And then when it's gone, it's gone. And then there'll be another one coming, another one coming, another one coming. For those of you that know, I've made over 5,000 of these videos. And I've been doing it for 15 years. And, I, the ego, like to think that I can emancipate myself from this because this isn't conducive with the pleasure that I derive from singing and playing my guitar. And I noticed by not being so prolific, then my singing actually has got much better. And some of you've said your singing is much better in such a short period of time because my voice isn't so tight. And so I don't want my voice to be tired. I don't really want to be doing this. I want to be doing that. I've got a mission. I'm on a mission that I'm going to be singing very competently, and then I'm going to be playing. It's going to be wonderful. And I can really feel that and see it. It's going to happen. And I've been on this trajectory since I was 18 years old. So in the Bible, when it says that if you eat from that tree of knowledge, you will truly die, at the very least you'll be cursed forever. Well, that's where we are, isn't it? Humanity is cursed. It's cursed by this ever-present, increasing influx of information that is overbearing. It is traumatizing. How many of us have subliminal anxiety? How many of us, if we actually stopped and felt the body, would feel this racing within our hearts? This is something that I've learned throughout the years. When I am not talking to anybody, for instance, like when I spent one year in prison on this last occasion, I spent the vast majority of that in deep contemplation and in meditation, meditating 5 hours every single day, and then reading for 10 hours. So absolutely still. And when I did that, when I was in my meditation, I couldn't actually feel the body, because the body was absolutely pure and at rest. The heart was absolutely pure because there was nothing that I needed to do, nothing to think about. It was just a standard routine every single day, and if I just sat on my bunk and closed my eyes, nobody would ever disturb me. And I'll do this out on the yard, and I'll do it on my bunk, and you know, people were astounded at how long I can stay in meditation for. You know, sometimes a couple of hours in one go, just sat there in the deepest of nothingness, with no thoughts, with no feeling in the body. Now here's a litmus test for you people. If you can do this, if you can actually sit in meditation and concentrate on your body, you shouldn't be able to feel your body at all. That's when you know that your body is in perfect functionality. When you are feeling an angst in there, then your body needs more practice, more meditation. If your stomach is rumbling, if you feel a sexual urge, if you feel a thirst, then you've got to cater for those things. You cater for those things, and then once they're gone, you ask yourself, what else is there? And then if you feel like there's a buzzing or fluttering, and it's around the solar plexus region, then you know that that's driven by anxiety. You know that there's a certain angst. And of course, when I first went into prison, this was really powerful, because my whole world got turned upside down, and all of a sudden I was like a caged fucking lion in a lunatic asylum, literally, with everybody I fucking looked with their heads covered in fucking tattoos, and I'm like, this is in actual fact an insane asylum. But I stilled my heart through the meditation, and at the end, let's say after 6 months, I was in this beautiful peace, and for 6 months I continued in that beautiful peace. And when I came out, some of you remember, I was even too still, too chilled to make any videos. But tentatively I started to make them, and over this period of 1.5 years, the rants came back, and the angst, you know, was being exhibited, because I was back in the land of a massive influx of knowledge, watching every single day, you know, 10 hours a day, many different things on YouTube, and all about the world, and they're doing this and they're doing that and this, that and the other. I don't watch that stuff anymore, because it's just complete and utter nonsense. It will never end, and what that stuff is doing is polluting our minds. It's absolutely destroying the possibility of tranquility in our minds. It's filling us full of subliminal angst, even though we may not think that I don't give a fuck about that. If we're listening to Trump and fucking Kamala and fucking Keir Starmer, if we're listening to all this bollocks, then we're going to get somewhat angry about it, because we're just going to say that's just complete and utter fucking shit. The human being is a fucking cesspool. Just look at the fuckery that's going on with the manipulation and the lying and the propaganda and the vying for our energy. Everybody and everything is vying for human energy, people. And so what I've concluded in my life, we have to cut and sever all of these fucking contacts, because there's hooks and lines in us from every direction. And if you sat down and you contemplated and you ask yourself how many hooks and lines are in me, then you discover that there's hundreds if not thousands, and they're going to be, oh, my family members, oh, my friends, oh, my partners, oh, my boss, oh, my obligations, oh, the car needs taxing, I need to put a new tyre on it. Every single fucking one of these thoughts, people, is pulling at you, and pulling at you in a different dimension, which fragments your fucking soul. This is why knowledge is the root of all evil. This is why in the Bible those people wrote that if you eat from that tree, you are going to get fucked up. And so, what can we do about that? Well, we minimise that, and that's what I've been doing throughout all these years. I used to run around the fucking world, as you know, prospecting, building properties in Africa and fucking Bulgaria, riddled with the mafia. And, you know, these countries, they were fucking volatile and dangerous, and everybody at me, you know, would have a level of volatility to them, and they'd be conjurers and liars and deceivers, and I was amongst this. Why? Because I wanted the fucking paper. I wanted the fucking paper, people. And so I put myself in this situation, and I put myself in the situation by where ultimately I was shot in my fucking bed because someone thought I'd have some fucking money in the house. And so money most certainly for me was the root of all evil, because it absolutely fucked me up. It put me in so much hypertension that in the end my ego imploded. It fell on the fucking floor and it went into the dark night of the soul, because I couldn't stand it anymore. The constant global travel, the adventure, the searching, the seeking, the questioning, the striving with business connections and devious people, and everybody's corrupt, and you've just got to be thinking 5 steps ahead of every motherfucker all the time, and you're out there on your own, you know, not knowing a single fucking soul until you've been around a while. Then you start to know a few people, but you got to be careful about every motherfucker. And you know, I fell foul, lost £22,000 in Bulgaria, I lost $30,000 in Africa, I lost £3,500 in England, I lost €3,500 in Greece, by just entering into poorly thought out deals with corrupt people. So, let me wrap this video up. What I have learned through my 15 years of deep meditation and all the experiences I've had with entheogens and global travel and thousands of books and videos and all that, I've learned that the secret of this life is pretty well within Buddhist philosophy. It's to retract and retreat from the maddening crowd. It's to find the confidence and the peace and the joy within. And for most people, that is completely unattainable. They will never even come close this time around. My sister never, ever has ever come close. She will never come close. She is corrupt beyond measure. And that's why she suffers trauma every single second of every single day of her life, because she has never found peace. But for those of us who have found peace, and those of you who have had a mental implosion, and you are absolutely on the floor devastated, in the realm of depression, you can't think anymore. And that's the beauty of it. You just can't think anymore. Then what happens? Because you can't think, your dream world opens up. And this is the thing Carl Jung was always speaking about to his patients: listen to your dreams. And then they say, oh, what's the dream going to tell me about this reality? We need to concentrate on this reality. And Jung would say, you've got to get over the fiction of the reality. You've got to get over the trap of the reality. Because when you start to look into your dreams, you'll see that there's no reality per se. Everything goes. And your dreams will be speaking to you from your unconscious, from your higher self, from cosmic consciousness. They will be showing you the way. And in my book, I write about occasions when I was absolutely dumbfounded by the communications I received from God, cosmic consciousness, the higher self, the Akasha, whatever it is that feeds the brain. I saw absolute crystal clear heaven. Angels, and they gave me a message, and that message was subliminal. It was a cryptic message, because whoever sent that knew I love cryptic messages, and they knew that when I'd solved that message, then I would greatly and deeply appreciate it. And how it came about was through synchronicity, because 2 weeks later I went into an old dusty second-hand bookstore and I bought one book with Carl Jung, and it was about the archetypes. And when I read that, it all became crystal fucking clear. And you ask yourself, who the fuck is sending me all this information? And this is what's been happening all of my life. I have been fed things. I have been presented with things. Everywhere I go, there's the exact book that I need at that particular time. When I was in prison, the exact fucking books came to me, one after the other, with just astounding synchronicity and perfection of timing. And I even tell a story about someone who gave me a book with my name on it, and at the time I was known as Zen on account of all the meditation that I was doing. And this new acquaintance of mine said to me, I've got a book with your name on it. Somebody gave it to me about fucking 8 months ago. I'll probably never read it. Do you want it? I went, fuck yeah, I want it. And then when he gave me that, I read it that night, and that fucking night on the 10th page or something was an answer to a conundrum that I've been deeply involved with for the past 2 weeks. I wanted to know what the difference was between belief and faith. And in that book, a Buddhist book, it laid it plain. And I'm like, are you fucking with me? I swear to God, you're fucking with me. This life, people, it runs so incredibly fucking deep. The vast majority of people will never ever have any idea. But some of you may know a little of what I'm speaking about, and maybe have had these experiences and may have contemplated. You may have had the time and the stillness and the calmness to contemplate this stuff, because if you don't have the stillness and the calmness, then you'll never get to the root of it. You'll never receive these synchronicities. You'll never be spoken to by the cosmos. You'll never have all these wonderful, perfect things placed before you at every given time. And so what's the purpose of this video? Why am I doing it? I didn't know I was going to be speaking about this. What is it I'm doing? The cosmos want me to do it, to give it to you, to expand consciousness in some fucking way. Maybe one of you will go, this video fucking came at the right time for me. Maybe just one of you. A couple of days ago, one of the long-term viewers sent me £50 as a thank you for the last video I put up, because it came at the perfect time for her. And I'm like, thank you very much, that's wonderful, that's great. And it isn't the first time that she sent money because of her appreciation. And so that serves me. And I said, well, I'll spend all that money on my friends out in the garden, because those little fecks, they're waiting on the fence now, and the white doves are sitting on my windowsill looking in at the window. They know what the fuck's going on, they know who I am. They sit on the fucking windowsill and they're grrr, 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 and they're looking at me with the fucking grrr, grrr, fucking breakfast time, grrr. And the squirrels are just sitting there with their fucking arms like this, and they're just waiting patiently because it's past feeding time because I've been making this video. Let me just say it one more time, people. If we're going to find the secret and the essence of really what we are, then it is in the deepest of meditation. Because when you no longer feel the body, you no longer know who you are, you no longer know anything about anything. You are absolutely in the abyss. When you're there, you know you have entered back into cosmic consciousness. And that is what you are. When your consciousness comes back online, it starts thinking, it starts projecting, it starts imagining, and it creates this world. And so this is exactly what quantum physics say. When a particle is being observed, or when a wave function of light is observed, then it becomes a particle. The wave function collapses into a corporal world. It collapses into the physical, and from being all realms of probability, it collapses into one tiny little photon. And that's what our consciousness does with the world. It collapses all the probability of the cosmos into our world. So we all live in our individuated projections of the world. Every single person has a different world, a completely different world. What do you know about the world? You think you live on a fucking world? What fucking world? How big's your world? My world, I've been to like 45 countries, many of them many times. I've been around this fucking place and I've put pieces together. So look at how massive my world is compared to your world. How many of you have actually been out the country, been out your fucking city? You know, how many people have travelled actually prolifically, really, you know, with a fucking rucksack, thumbing around or using public transport? Or how many of you have seen the world like that? When you've done that, you've built a world. So that's why my world's bigger. And when I've had this mass influx of information, then my consciousness becomes absolutely exponentially broader than anyone who hasn't done that. And so are you telling me that we live in the same world? We live in vastly different worlds, people. And what I've come to know, like I'm saying now, is that when we acquire all this knowledge, potentially it can be very devastating. How many times have we heard it's a fine line between madness and genius? Well, lots of you will probably have seen a little bit of that exhibited with me, with my angst and my delivery and a certain level of frustration and you know, to impart information, to get the information out of my head. You know? And that's it. And I've got books lined up. I've got books lined up. I've got 5 or 6 books fucking lined up. What are waiting to come out. And I'm like, I can't fucking be bothered to stand in front of the fucking computer for fucking 6 or 8 months. That last book took me 8 months to write. Standing in front of the computer for 5 hours every fucking day, because it's an obsession, it's a compulsion, it has to come out. And anybody that will tell you about writing, they'll tell you the same. You know, Bernardo Kastrup, the modern day philosopher, he tells how when he's writing a book, he's woke up at any hour of the morning and he gets out of bed because he's compelled to start fucking writing till he's exhausted or till he's got that bit off his chest, and then he can go back to rest until the next time when consciousness tells him, hey, it's time. And you have to comply, otherwise you'll never rest. Your mind will never be free. So knowledge, people, for lots of people, is a fucking curse. It's a fucking curse. And I will say that there are times when I have been in the absolute bliss, I've been in the Tao, I've been in that confluence with nature, and I know that I am God. I know that it is God. I know that we are God. It is just only God. At our absolute core and our essence, it is God. Whatever God is, not fucking Yahweh, Jehovah, or Allah, or any of those mothers. It's the essence of the cosmos. It's the creator of consciousness. It's the genius of whatever the fuck's going on, that doesn't want us to know what's going on. For some unfathomable reason, because we're not fucking broad enough mentally to be able to receive that, it doesn't want us to know what the fuck is going on. Because maybe it is all that there is, and it gets tired of being all that there is, so it just gives itself a fucking break. It creates a billion fucking shards of its own consciousness, and it severs the motherhood. It severs the connection to the mothership, and it leaves us all bereft of that connection. But some of us do have a memory of that. We have an idea of that. We have an a priori knowledge of that connection. We know that we are it. Why are you fucking holding this from me? Why are you severing it from me? What is it? Why am I severing it from myself? So I can have a human experience of Aaron fucking Berry, the awakened brave, and I can rant in front of a fucking camera, you know, for fucking years. Fortunately for me, what the cosmos does give me, it gives me both things. It gives me this wonderful connection with the absolute stillness of me knowing that I am God, that I am the cosmos. And that only happens when the sun is in the sky. During these winter months, it leaves me. God consciousness leaves me, because it's the light, people. It's the light that brings life to everything. And when the light isn't there, then God consciousness slips away into the background. And this is why the sun's been worshipped forever, because they have all felt the same. The pagans, they've felt absolutely rooted with Ra, the Egyptian name for the sun. And when you look at Israel, well, you've got Is for Isis, you've got Ra for Ra, and then you've got El for Elohim. And so you've got three gods in Israel. And then when you look at the Star of David is masculine and feminine conjoined. And so when you start to learn about this stuff, you look up the ancients, and they felt the same way. They felt this in their roots, and that was the essence of them as being shamans and priests and all this sort of thing. But the vast majority of people have lost that now. But fortunately, I haven't lost it, or I did lose it, but I've regained it. I've done the work, and I've been blessed, and now I'm there. I know it. I feel it. I am it, and I have the greatest level of contentment for it. But like I say, I have to do this. This is the price. I have to do this. This is my obligation. For me to have this, to have my life, my absolute blissful life, I have to impart some of this, people. And in the past, it's been highly frustrating, because I would make videos like this and I wouldn't get a single comment. And I'd go, what the fuck's going on? Why the fuck are you making me do this when there's fucking idiots out there, they're all dead? But over the years, I've come to know that what I say does land now and again with some people. And I suppose that's enough. God works in mysterious ways. The cosmos works in mysterious ways. And I suppose this is all we can, you know. You see, me, speaking like I do, I can very easily stand on a stage like Jordan Peterson and convey all this stuff in a similar sort of level of madness. You know, with his wringing of his hands when he's trying to, and he's closing his eyes, and he's trying to taste the words, and he's trying to pull them out, and you know, he's got all this stuff as he's trying to give it. He's trying to, and when anybody asks him, "Do you believe in God?" he says, And people say, well, I'm just asking, it's a simple question. It's not a simple question. It's not a simple question, because you have to say, what the fuck is God? What the fuck do you think God is? What the fuck does everybody in this audience think God is? Everybody's got a different idea about fucking God. God's just a fucking idea. Does anybody know definitively what God is? No. We could write about it for fucking billion years. So don't be asking me if I believe in God. You don't know what you're asking. You don't know what you're asking, you're a fool. And that's the thing, you see. You see, because of my Libra scale thing, I can be very, very animated and seemingly anxious or aggressive or whatever. But then, in an instant, I'm back on the other side. And I'm back absolutely still. There's no anger, there's no resentment, there's no frustration. There's just absolute stillness and calmness. And I don't need to think about anything, people. I can just turn off thoughts, just like that. Because I've been doing it for so long. Whenever I want to meditate, I just close my eyes, the body just sinks down, and I disappear. Now, years ago I took a hypnotherapy course, and I learned how to put people under hypnosis. So I learned how to put myself under hypnosis, and when you can do that to yourself, you know what it feels like, then that obviously helps you be able to recognize it in somebody else. And so hypnosis is very similar to meditation, and you go into that same space, only with, well, I mean, some instances of hypnosis you're very, very deep, but not everybody gets that deep. But with the deepest of meditation, you enter into nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nothing perceivable, nothing conceivable. You don't have a mind. You're not thinking about a single thing. You are in the nothingness, people. If you can comprehend that. Most people won't be able to comprehend it unless they've been there. So, getting back now. The Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve were, that's where they were. They were in this non-thinking state of mind, without knowledge, just living like primates, blissfully. They had all the food, everything they needed at their fingertips. They didn't need to think about anything. As soon as they started to question that's where all went wrong. Now, some of you will be familiar with the Bible, and when Adam and Eve ate from that fruit of the tree of knowledge, all of a sudden they realized they were naked. They looked down and realized, I have a cock, you have a pussy. What's all that about? Why do you have that and I have this? What are they for? Oh. And that's where the line of inquiry started. Why do you have these and I don't? Why are you smaller and lighter framed and I'm bigger and stronger? Why, what? Why is that tree different to that tree? Why does that ball of fire go across the sky like that? Why does it become dark? That's where it begins. Why? You see, primates never ask why. And when you look at an ape, they're just super, super calm, aren't they? It's just... they're not even interested in who's watching. If you try to get the glance of an ape, you'll never do it. They will never, ever look into your eyes. They don't have that level of consciousness to be able to realise they're being observed by a conscious entity, because they don't have that consciousness. So they can't see your consciousness looking at them. They don't have that recognition, oh, there's another conscious entity looking at me. That connection when conscious entities look into each other's eyes. And of course, you know, there are many animals that we may think are looking at us and thinking something, but because they don't have eyes like we do, why do we have these white irises? And the iris is the coloured bit. The white of the eye anyway. Why do we have the differences? Well, it's speculated that we have the differences because we can see many things. We can discern many things from the eyes. And when we look down like this, it means something. When we look up like that, it means something. When we look up like that, it means something. When we look down like that, when we look to the side, when we kind of look straight up, all these things mean something different. Whether our pupils are dilated or not, it means something. Whether we squint, whether we're open like this, they all mean something. We can read so much from our eyes. And of course, that's a massive part of the evolution because we can discern another person's intentions from their eyes. We can see the soul. We can see the devil behind their eyes, yeah? Anyway, people, so it's the stillness that is absolutely paramount, and anybody that achieves that stillness, like gurus in caves or fucking Buddhas sitting on the trees, they have found the answer, because they will know exactly what they are. They are cosmic consciousness having a human experience. That is what it is. As to why we're having the human experience, who the fuck knows? We can only ever speculate. Some of us enjoy the journey, some of us fucking hate it. And I can say that I've enjoyed every step of my journey. How fortunate is that? There's never been any bad times because they've always been good. They've always been purposeful. There's always been massive benefits to whatever suffering I've been through. And I've been through a good deal. But I've never felt a victim in any shape or form. Never ever have I been a victim. I've always known that my suffering is hugely beneficial and a massive integral part of my personal development and my reason for being here. And if we can all embrace suffering like that, you will never suffer. That's the thing, people. If you can embrace it, knowing that it is an actual blessing to you, you will look back and consider that you're absolutely blessed. It's uncomfortable at the time, yes. It can be very stressful and traumatizing at the time, yes. But if you can have the vision and the foresight to know that you are growing, you're building, you are developing, your soul is enhancing, then you will never resent the suffering that you are suffering at any given time. And on that note, people, I think I'll call it a day. I think you get the picture. Garden of Eden, before the tree of knowledge, perfection. Bring that forward now to today. It's the knowledge that fucks everybody up. I don't think anybody with knowledge lives a blissful life, because you can only live a blissful life, people, when you empty your mind of that knowledge. You have to have an absolutely empty glass. When your glass is empty, there's nothing to be worried about. There's nothing to fret about. You're in cosmic consciousness. When your glass is full, look at all those problems you've got. So what do? We have to empty the glass. We have to peel away the layers of the onion. We have to get back to our actual cosmic essence, which, by the way, is completely impractical for most people. But there is a way. Some of us do it. I've done it. It can be done.